Welcome, everybody. Today is our first session of our college admission series, where we'll be going over a common application overview. So just a very quick agenda. We will start off by introducing you to the series and college admissions as a whole. Then I'll be going over a timeline of college admissions. Then Amy, who is the head of our curriculum department, will be going over an overview of the common application. And then finally, we'll have another Q&A portion to answer all of your questions. So beginning with an introduction. So first, welcome again to our college admission series. This is the first session of a 3-month series up until December, where we will walk you through the different parts of the application journey. We'll feature workshops and panels with guest speakers from renowned institutions, varying from MIT, Harvard, NYU, Duke, many other schools, so a lot of talented guests. We will have events roughly 2 to 3 times each month at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And you can feel free to check our Luma calendar page and to look out for updates for upcoming events. So now an introduction to college admissions. So students will typically begin applying to institutions in the fall of the senior year. So I know that it can vary a little bit by internationals, for international students about what is regarded as your senior year, but you'll be applying to college the year before you attend college. So if you're attending college in 2022, you apply in 2021. If you are attending college in 2023, you apply in 2022, etc. So the goal of your application is to give a brief glimpse at who you are and what you can bring to the college admissions table. And so that's why whenever you're writing your essays, your supplements, all of that, you want to make sure that you centralize on you and who you are, because that's the goal of the entire application. You want to remember, though, that regardless of whatever happens, you are not defined by the application journey. There's only so much you can share about yourself. We've been living for 15, 16, 17, 18 years of our lives, and there's only so much we can display in one application. So do not feel like you are defined by whatever happens in the admissions journey. You'll accomplish this by submitting a variety of different information. I'll be showing that in the next slide. And then finally, just another reminder that the journey can feel stressful, but it will also be very well worth it. You'll find yourself growing tremendously as a person, and EduVisa is here to help guide you through and answer some of your questions for free to help alleviate some of that stress. So now I did want to show you all an admissions checklist for the various of different elements that you may need for submitting applications. This may look very long, but you'll get used to all of this with time. So first is the application form. So the common application is the one that is most frequently used. Some schools will also ask for example, the coalition application, the UC application, Questbridge application. There's so many different applications. And so for every single item in this checklist, you do want to refer to the college website for every single college you're applying to better understand all of their specific requirements. You will need your high school transcript of 4 years, and a school profile. Your counselor, or if you don't have a counselor, a principal or another teacher will be submitting all that info. Next, you'll be submitting your personal statement. For the majority of cases, you only submit one longer personal statement. Questbridge required 2. And there are some other schools that have very lengthy supplements. So there's that. For recommendation letters, you'll typically ask for 2 to 3 recommendation letters from teachers and 1 from a counselor or principal or teacher to replace a counselor if you don't have one. You don't want to go beyond 4 or 5 recommendation letters unless required, because at that point it's kind of overkill and a waste of the college admission officer's time unless you have something substantial to add. If you have an employer who you think can add a very unique perspective to who you are, then it is okay to have a recommendation letter from an employer or professor who you interned for. Then there's test scores. So for test scores, the majority of schools are going test optional, test blind, so don't freak out too much about test scores. Worst comes to worst, if you don't get the score that you want, you can just not submit and still be completely fine. But if you are taking the SAT, ACT, or AP exams, you will want to have all those test scores ready to share in your college application. You'll have your supplemental essays, which Some schools may require them, some schools may not. Some schools may say that there are optional supplemental essays. That's really just to see who actually cares to put the effort in. If a school says that a supplemental essay is optional, you do still want to write it anyways. There's financial aid forms, such as FAFSA, the CSS profile. You do want to check your eligibility for these financial aid forms. If you are a U.S. citizen or reside in the U.S., then these are financial aid forms that you want to look out for. I believe the CSS profile can be filled out by anyone, regardless of citizenship status, though. And then the last three are all optional, only if necessary. So interviews, if requested or if available, then you can take an interview. Some schools may ask for art portfolios or research abstracts. Usually these are optional unless they're required for a specific program. For example, if you're applying for a theater program or an artistic program, you probably may be required to submit a portfolio. And then finally, there's the additional information section, which is at the end of all applications. Again, this is optional, and you should only include additional information here if absolutely necessary. And you want to keep this concise and to the point. Okay. So this is just an overview of the different types of application methods. So the main four that you'll see around often are early decision, early action, regular decision, and rolling admissions. So the main difference to keep in mind is whether or not these are binding and when the application deadline is. Early decision, the deadline to submit your application will typically be in November, and you'll be hearing back by mid-December. The early decision is the only one of these four that is binding, which means that if you get accepted, you must attend. So that means that you would need to withdraw all other applications if you get accepted, and you can only apply to one school through early decision. The one benefit of it being binding is that it's a really good way to show that how much you're interested in a college. You should only apply early decision if you know for sure that's your dream school and that you would be happy if you attend. And this is a way some schools, especially Ivy Leagues, for example, or other very competitive schools, don't track demonstrated interest. So sometimes this is your only way to demonstrate that you are interested. Then there's early action, which is due around the same time as early decision, but it's non-binding. So that means you can apply to as many schools as you want through early action, and you would not be required to attend if you're accepted. You usually have until May 1st to accept or decline early action offers anyways, so you will have a lot of time to reflect on whether or not you want to accept those offers. Regular decision is the regular method. So you submit your application by early January or February and will hear back by March or April. A regular decision is also non-binding. You're not required to attend if accepted, and you can also apply to regular decision to as many schools as you wish. And finally, rolling admissions. This is a little bit less common, but it still exists. So you may see this term around. In rolling admissions, applications are reviewed on a first come, first served basis. So for as long as seats are available, they'll just review applications as you go. So for this reason, you will have a more advantage for rolling admissions if you can apply as soon as possible, because that would mean that more seats are available. All right. So that's for my introduction of just how the college admissions process works. And so now I'll be going over a quick timeline of the different months starting from August up until December. So first, August. This list may look a little intimidating, but some of these events may carry over into future months, and that's okay. This is the ideal timeline. It's not perfect. Sometimes we mess up, and that's completely fine, but this is just the ideal timeline of when you want to get things done. First, you want to create a list, a document, or a spreadsheet listing out all the application deadlines and requirements for schools. If there's other information you want to record, such as types of schools, for example, is it a liberal arts school or research institution? Where is it located? So many different information that you can include. So you can include these in your list or spreadsheet as well, but you definitely want to make sure you're keeping track of all deadlines and requirements. Second, you want to begin brainstorming topics for your personal statement as soon as you can. So that's your Common App essay. So start thinking of ideas for topics to cover in your personal statement. You want to have at least one draft, preferably more, of your personal statement by the end of August. It's completely okay if it's not perfect. I went through like I think 9 drafts and I still wasn't happy with the end, but that's completely fine. Sometimes the thing that's daunting about the essay process is that sometimes you might find yourself scrapping out a bunch of words or sentences, and that's just completely okay. It is kind of like sometimes you may need to sacrifice some time, but it will all work out in the end. So you do want to save time to write as many drafts as necessary. Next, you want to open accounts for all the required application portals. So start creating your Common App accounts, Coalition apps accounts, and for any other applications, start creating those accounts. It's also helpful to get the demographic sections out of the way for these applications. So Amy will be showing you what the background information section looks like in the Common App, and so it'll be helpful for you to just get those out of the way in August. You want to register for a final administration of the SAT or ACT if necessary. If you're just not going to test, that's completely fine. If you're content with your scores, that's completely fine as well. And I would recommend only doing one, at most two, but really just one administration of the test in the fall semester, because you will be very drained by the essays and all other components of applications, and you want to dedicate as much time to those as well. And then finally, apply to college flying programs. Flying programs are they are kind of competitive, and so some schools may host programs to fly students out, or it might be a virtual event series of showing students what the college is like, giving workshops about a specific major, etc. I think that most flying programs have already happened, or their deadlines may have passed, but you do want to just check to see if any is remaining. And then on the note of fly-in programs, you also want to start registering for info sessions, college visits, college tours for all colleges that you're applying to. Next is September. So in September, if you have not already, you do want to request recommendation letters at least 1 month in advance of deadlines. Preferably earlier. The earlier you can request for recommendation letters, the better. But you want to give them at least 1 month in advance to write the letters. Next, you want to continue writing the drafts of your personal statement. You can start sharing them with 2 to 7 people. I would say I personally shared it with about 5. I wouldn't really go beyond 5 to 10, because you want to make sure that you are still keeping your authentic voice and don't feel like you have to be obligated to say yes to every change that's recommended. And Amy will also be talking about that in the comment section. Third, you want to write your drafts for all the supplemental essays. So going through all of your early action and early decision schools, seeing what supplemental essays are required or recommended, and beginning drafts for all of those. And then finally, again, one more administration of the SAT or ACT if necessary. I would not advise more than one for the fall semester. October is following up with those who are writing your recommendation letters, to just see the status, reminding them when the deadline is so that they can get it in time, completing the FAFSA CSS profile, any other financial aid forms, if applicable. So if you qualify to apply for to fill out those applications, revising and submitting all of your early decision and early action applications. So going through your demographic sections, going through your extracurriculars list, polishing your essays and supplements to make sure that it's all good. And then finally, if you finish all of this and have some time to spare, then you can start writing your supplemental essays for regular decision school. There's the month of November. So this is continuing to focus on your supplemental essays for regular decision schools, making any revisions to your personal statement if necessary, and searching for scholarships and grants to help with tuition costs. And then finally, the month of December. So in the month of December, you want to finalize and submit all of your regular decision and rolling admissions applications. You want to start reviewing any acceptances offers and any financial aid offers from the schools you applied to in early action. If you did get accepted through early decision, then congrats, you finished the process. If you do get accepted through early decision and you aren't content with the financial aid, then there are some cases where you can appeal your early decision or asked to be removed from the bindingness of early decision only if the financial aid isn't enough. You do want to check every individual school's policy, though, on financial aid and early decision. Third, sending letters of interest to schools you were waitlisted from or deferred from in early action and early decision. And then finally, completing any interviews if requested. So that's my timeline of the college admissions journey. The journey does continue on through January all the way to your end of your senior year, but this is the bulk of the actual applying to college journey. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Amy to go over the common application. I'm going to stop sharing and Amy is going to start sharing her screen. And yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna go over the Common App application. So first off, what is the Common App? It's like for applying to colleges, and it's supposed to be a more efficient process since you can apply to a ton of colleges with just one basic core application, in addition to like the supplements for the specific school. And so you sent it to every school you apply to, like the exact same application, and there's like a fee which varies between the school. So you can use the Common App for first year and transfer applications, but today we're just gonna focus on the first year application. And just as Tush mentioned before, there are other forms of application like the Common App, such as the UC Schools, Questbridge, and Coalition. The Common App also has other functions such as college searching, where you can make up your college list through the stats on the descriptions. And you can also find places for financial aid resources and scholarships, which I'll address later. And so today we're going to go over each section of the Common App website, the Common App, the college search section, and my colleges, in addition to financial aid resources. So first off, you're gonna have to make an account on the Common App website, and then you're gonna have to go to the Common App here, and so you click on Common App with the third section on the top, and then you fill out your profile, which has all your personal information, which should be pretty straightforward. And then when you get to the family section, they're gonna ask you like what your family does, like what your parents do, and like what your siblings do, and like how much they like what educational background they had. And so you're probably gonna have to help, like you're probably gonna have to have your family fill that out with you. And there's these other functions such as preview, where you can view your whole like form as a PDF version like this, which is like better when you're done and you want to proofread. It's like easier to read. And then when you're done with a section, there's going to be a check mark. So remember to see a check mark to know that you completed all parts of the sections. And for the education and testing section, like these two, the third and the fourth, you're going to have to self-report your academic records in addition to uploading your official transcript. So like when you upload your transcript, you have to ask your school to upload it for you. So you're probably gonna have to email your teacher or guidance counselor for that. But other than that, you have to list all your um courses that you're taking this year and the courses you took in secondary education, like in also colleges, universities. So I took some at community colleges, which I listed here, and I also took some of these community college classes in my senior year. So I also mentioned them in the current and most recent year courses here. And for the grade section, I just it should be pretty straightforward. And sometimes you might have like a question that if about your GPA if it's weighted or not. So my school, we didn't go on the 5.0 scale, which is usually what people call weighted as. So like what we had was that an A minus in like a advanced placement class was also a 4.0, and my counselor told me that it counted as weighted. So if you have any questions, you should email your school about it. And for the standardized testing section, you have to report your scores as well, but you can also you just report your highest scores, so it's like super scoring, but you also have to submit the official score report through like College Board or like the ACT website. And for the honor section, you don't have to fill in all these sections, like you have 5 slots or 5 like awards you can list, and you should order them from most to least impressive, since sometimes the admission officers won't read the last few since they're going really fast. And these rewards could be school wide, like you're the top math student of the year or something. And it can be regional slash city, state, nation, national, or be an honor society award like National Honor Society, or like an AP award like the AP Scholars with Distinction. And make sure your award is stated really specifically, since you're not going to have a description section for them. You're good, but you're going to have um like you can list like what grade levels you got the award in, and like what kind of award it was. And I would not recommend you put honor society in the top of the list, because honor societies are pretty like are easier to get into, and a lot of people do them. So here are some activity section tips. I would not suggest you to fill in all 10 sections unless you're honestly really passionate about each activity. Like I would suggest like 7 to 9 activities, but less than that is also fine, because all that matters is how much you justify them in your essays, like if you show your passion for them. And for the hours, you have to list your hours, and just make a reasonable guess. Slight exaggeration is acceptable, but be very careful, because the admission officers are gonna like suspect something if you have like so many hours for each of them, since it might be like impossible to achieve. And you have to order the activities from most important to least important. And how you like judge this is by how unique the activity is and how much you committed to it, plus your leadership roles. But you don't have to have a leadership role to make your activity stand out or be important. And if possible, like this is really optional, you can order your like activities by categories, such as like the art related and like closer together, and the academic ones closer together, because then colleges are going to see like you have like 2 to 3 passions instead of like 7, which will be pretty like hard to like think that you have something you're really passionate about. And for the description section for each activity, focus more on describing your contributions rather than just defining the activity, so that it will sound more impressive, and it will make you seem like you are very dedicated and involved in the activity. Don't use full sentences, since there's like a really small word limit. So use short phrases that convey the same meaning as like full sentences and paragraphs. Also include numbers and stats, since that will just make it more specific and more believable that you were involved. Also, like take a lot of time to proofread and improve the words you choose and like how you're phrasing it to make it as like impressive as possible. And you can like search up very like active verbs and adjectives online. And for the writing section, there's going to be a personal statement section and an additional information section. So for the personal statement, you have 7 prompts, and the prompt you choose doesn't really matter that much, but you have to focus on making your essay clear and concise. And don't like talk about your course's grades and test scores. talk about something personal, and also don't repeat what you wrote on your activities or resume that much. So just avoid the repetition of other sections of your Common App and take like a lot of time to brainstorm what remarkable qualities or impact are you trying to portray and how you want college admission officers to see you as. And so a lot of successful Common App essays revolve around one specific event that had a lot of meaning to the individual. So don't talk about like your whole high school experience. Talk about one like small, very detailed moment that had a lot of meaning to you. And when you're probably gonna have people proofread it, so don't ask everybody to proofread it. Ask like 5 to 10 people you trust, such as family, friends, and teachers, to give advice. And when you when you receive the advice, don't like take all of them to heart because you still have to maintain your voice. And for the additional information section, this one's optional, but is probably recommended because it helps admission officers distinguish students further. And uh, effective approaches would be to elaborate on important activities and share health incidents issues you encountered that severely disadvantage your academic or extracurricular performance, or you can explain potential red flags in your application, along with addressing the impacts of difficult family circumstances, disabilities, or unusual learning environments, such as like the online format for COVID in the pandemic. So treat like this section as a well organized and concise essay with main ideas. Don't just list a bunch of like situations that you want to address. Make sure it's cohesive and just like a well written essay. Also avoid making another personal statement. So don't treat it as like a personal statement that you have to spend a lot of time on, or like be very well, like extremely well written and personal. And don't talk about excuses such as like why I got this bad grade this one year, and don't repeat your resume again because repetition is just gonna waste time for the admission officers. Also, don't rant about grades or show further redundancy. Yeah. And so that's basically the Common App. So here's the activities and here's the writing. And then there's these other sections, like after you're done filling it out, you can move on to the college search. And so the college search is for creating your college list. So you first click on college search and you can just search any college you're interested. And when you have it, you can just click on the name, and there's like a lot of descriptions, such as the application fee and the standardized testing policy, and like what are the requirements, and just more information like what's required. And so if you are interested in applying, you just add, click add to my colleges or the plus sign here, and there'll be a check mark, and that college will go to my colleges. So this will be your official college list. So how do you apply to these colleges? Well, you click on the college, and here is just the college specific application. So you can review the information again to see what you're missing or what you still need to do. And here are like the application specific questions. For example, here you can just fill out this because it should be pretty straightforward. Like here you can like report if you're going test optional or not, which a lot of people are. And then you have this recommenders area where you're supposed to contact your teacher to upload So yeah, so many schools have these essay questions in the question section, such as why this school and other personal questions. So you have to avoid repetition on these ones too, and also do a lot of research on the college website to know like how to sell yourself to that school specifically. And don't like repeat these supplements because the colleges want to know why you're interested in that school specifically. And if you can put another school's name in the like if you can replace another school's name in the essay, then that means it's not special enough for that school. And so for the recommendation section, remember to contact your teachers, counselors, or other recommenders as soon as possible. Like during the fall is all right, but I would have recommended contacting them over the summer. And if you want to make it like improve it, you can send them like messages of how you like their class and your interactions with them, along with your accomplishments, and you can also talk to them like in person or online via like Zoom or Google Meets. So after your recommendation are done, you can review and submit. And I would highly recommend you proofread and review constantly because this application is pretty long and there might be some errors that you may not notice in the beginning. And essays are extremely important. Like my standardized testing scores were not that great, but I think my essays really saved me. And because I spent like my whole summer on them. So remember to do thorough research either on school websites, and you can also discuss the financial aid situation and email the colleges for any specific questions or clarifications that normal people might not be able to answer. Also, don't procrastinate. Like you should spend as much time as you like can on your application because you have to make it like you don't have to make it perfect as possible, but you have to like feel like you tried your best on it. And you have to accept constructive criticism while like maintaining your own voice and opinion so it still sounds like yourself. Also, in the end of the day, the admission process is kind of random. Like your grades, like you can have like a 4.0, but you might not still might not get in, and someone with like a 3.5 would get in instead. And as for financial aid resources, the college, the Common App also has the final section called financial aid resources here. And these are just going to lead you to a bunch of links such as the FAFSA, which is usually for domestic students, and the CSS profile, which is for domestic and international students. The application for these opens up on August 1st, and it's usually first come, first serve. So as soon as the date opens, as soon as the application opens, you'll have to fill it out as fast as you can if you want the most out of it. It also includes a fee, which I think is around $20 to $30. So yeah, and if you want more scholarships, I would recommend you researching them on the school website that you're interested in. And there's also other scholarship programs that you can find and apply to where you just have to write a short essay. And when you reach your college decision day, you should compare your cost and financial aid situation to make the best financial decision when choosing your college. And that's basically it. We're gonna move on to the Q&A section.
Okay, so I think we will begin with all the questions that were asked during registration. So we did have a bunch of questions that were asked in registration, so we're going to start off with those. Feel free to continue sending questions on the different channels, but I will begin with those. So the first question that I see is about extracurriculars. So should we try to fill out all the slots in the extracurricular section? Amy did cover this. Um, You can, if you have enough extracurriculars to do so, but only include extracurriculars that are of quality. So if you have some fluffier ones that you don't think really show who you are as a person, your values, what you bring to the table, then it's not really that necessary. So you can, but focus on your commitment, leadership, and what it shows about who you are.
Okay, so the next question was how to write about EC so that the admission officers like it. I would say make it as like straightforward as brief as possible. Also, don't be vague. Like try not to be vague anywhere and include like specific stats like you raised this much money for a charity or you did this um contribution to this program or this charity and whatnot.
I second what Amy said, and also action verbs. Amy mentioned this, but using active verbs, like for example, saying organized or I'm trying to think, like initiated, kind of like verbs like those that really show that bring meaning to what you've done. So the third question that we have is what extracurricular activities do colleges want to see most in the application? This is a little bit of an interesting question because what colleges want to see is what you're most passionate about. And this may sound like a cop out answer, but I feel like when you are in college, when you're in high school and when you are doing extracurricular activities, you don't want to go into the activities thinking, is this going to look good in college? Because you want to make sure that it's something that you're passionate about, that tells a lot about who you are, and then the college application part will come with it. So if you are participating in an extracurricular activity that you feel happy to delve hours and hours of your week into, and if it's something that really speaks about who you are, then when application season comes around, you will find it so much easier to write about those extracurricular activities in your essays, and it'll just come so much more easily to you. That being said, there are some activities that do stand out more. So if it is an extracurricular activity that is a lot more common, for example, debate team, student government, math team, those are all very, very common. And so it's not that you shouldn't include those, but if you do have extracurricular activities along those lines, you do want to really focus on what makes you unique from the crowd. There are some extracurricular activities that are a bit more admired. For example, research experiences or volunteer hours. Those are a lot more admired. But regardless of whatever you do, you want to make sure it's something that you're passionate about and that speaks to who you are. Because if it's something you enjoy, then the application part will just come naturally to you.
Yeah, so now we're gonna move on to some general questions. So the first one is what are the college application deadlines? And Tush already addressed this. They they're early action, early decision, and regular decision. So you just have to do your research on the website because it's gonna be listed there and on the Common App as well. Usually, it's gonna open like there's some applications that are due in September, I think, in October, but most of them are usually November 1st or November 15th for early action, and January and February for regular decision.
All right, so the next question that we have is how long is the best time to spend on a single application? The interesting thing about this question is that you'll actually be working on them all kind of at the same time because, so for example, every single application will have a personal statement majority of the time. And so you'll be starting off with that. And then the supplemental essays, I guess in terms of how long you spend on the essays, it really depends on when you begin and how much time you have until the deadline. So there are some people who begin starting from June or even earlier, like in their junior year. If you do that, that's completely fine. And so they probably will have like some months to work on to work on their essays. Supplemental essays, I feel you may find yourself spending like a week or so. If you're working on it like a little bit each night, then I guess for each college you can spend a week or so on the essays. If you spend more, that should be fine. Just make sure you're taking care of your mental health. Um, a lot of seniors, I know we've given a very ideal timeline, but procrastination happens. We're human, and so some people literally cram in their essays at the very last minute, and it just happens. So ideally, I would say like spend like I guess it would be cool if you spend each week on a different college's supplement. But if you can't stick to that timeline, don't beat yourself up about it. But please make sure you're taking care of your mental health.
Yeah, for me personally, I just worked on one school's application for like the majority of the application season. And the rest of my schools, I just used a lot of my information from like a lot of my information from the drafts from that one school to do my other supplements for my other schools. So it just depends like where you want to focus because sometimes you shouldn't put the exact same amount of effort in each school. So yeah, and the next question is, what are some ways to make an application stand out from other applicants? Well, I would say to not copy, not like read someone else's application and try to like mimic it. And you just have to be yourself. Don't write about how you think colleges want to see you as. It just like be clear and talk about something really specific that like mainly happened to you and or very few people in your essays and um yeah, and then also uh just like just make yourself like just like be yourself. Like I don't think there's much you can do and just don't like follow someone else's essay format and be very specific when you talk about like the events that happened to you.
Adding on to Amy, I feel like some of us don't really realize just how unique we are. You may feel, for example, that maybe you participated in the same clubs as someone, you participated in the same jobs, the same internships, blah, blah, blah. But it's a very unique sequence of events that make you who you are. Maybe you and someone else both participated in a research lab, but how did you get to that research lab? What meaning does that have for you? It will be very unique to different individuals. So even if you feel that your events and the stuff you've done are very common, average, traditional, whatever you're thinking, there is going to be something unique that makes that event special to you. And so really reflecting on that. I feel like this is one of the benefits of the college admissions process is that you spend so much time reflecting on yourself and what makes you you. And so really standing out, I think that's one of the tips I have for making yourself stand out, really just honing in on who you are, what makes you special, why you're different from everyone else, because you are different no matter what you feel, no matter how you feel otherwise. And yeah. So the seventh question that we have here is, when should one start preparing for college essays? I would say now. It cannot hurt to begin now, and it will save you so much more stress if you just start getting as much as you can out of the way before high school starts getting hectic. I think that I would strongly recommend having at least one draft done of your personal statement by the end of August. It does not have to be perfect. It doesn't need to be best, but just having one draft just there so that you can start working on it and revising it, etc. And yeah, so just as soon as you can, the earlier the better, and the more you save stress later down the line.
Yeah. So the next question is, when applying to Ivy League schools, do you apply to the school itself, no declare major in first year, or do you apply to a specific major? So for Ivy Leagues, I you can like your major isn't declared until your like second year. So you can like go undecided if you want because I really just like look at your passion. You don't have to know what your future will be like to the T. You can just have like a brief like idea of what you want to do, and you don't have to declare a major your first year either if you're not sure. Like you can just go undecided, and also you can yeah, it just doesn't really matter your major since like the colleges don't expect you to know what you're gonna do in the next 5 years. So just talk about what you're passionate about and just like if you wanna list a major, if they give you the option, just like go with a like just choose one that you think you might be interested in because you can always change it later in college anyway.
Yeah, adding on to Amy, so I think Ivy Leagues do tend to be very liberal arts. And so for Ivy Leagues in particular, you are like it's completely fine if you go in undecided. You are able to list out a major if you want. So for example, I did list out biochem because that's what I wanted to do. But if you don't have a decision, then you are completely fine. And most colleges don't require you to declare until your sophomore year of college, actually. That being said, there are some few schools that are kind of very specialized in that. For example, Cooper Union has very like three different programs, and so it's like you can only apply to the school if you're applying to one of those three programs. So they have like an engineering program, an architect program, and something else. So schools like Cooper are like very, very like you need to know what you want to do with your life. That's not the majority of the case. So don't feel pressured to declare a major if you don't. One of my regrets actually is declaring a major when I wasn't actually decided on what I wanted to do. So you're fine if you don't want to declare. The next question that we have is how involved are schools in the college admissions process? Um, I am a little bit confused on this question if you're referring to schools like the high school you're attending or the colleges that you're hoping to attend. If you're talking about the high schools that you're attending, that is very variable to like the specific high school that you go to. My school was kind of mediocre, so they were involved, but not involved. My brother went to a school that was very involved, like literally, like they would block out time in their schedules every day to work on college applications. So they were very involved. It will vary a lot by the school you go to. So if you go to a school that doesn't devote as much time to college applications, you may find that you need to spend more time on your own. So I do encourage you to look for free resources such as EduVisa to guide you through the college admissions process. Um, Amy?
Okay. So next question is what to do if I am unable to afford AP exams? Well, like it's not your fault that you can't afford them. So you can mention them in your additional information section, and you probably are gonna use your time to do something else, like that is more worth your time and like more related to what you're passionate about. So I don't think it's gonna be that like much of an impact. A lot of schools also don't offer AP exams, and you can try to like some schools they allow you to have free dual enrollment and in community college because like the school can fund you. So like just because you're not taking AP exams doesn't mean it will significantly affect how colleges see you, since a lot of students in like schools with APs also don't take AP exams because they just it's just not for them, and they just don't want to like be that like challenge like they don't want to like take that advanced courses in school so they can focus on their extracurriculars instead.
Yeah, I completely agree with Amy. And just seconding that, I think that one thing to consider about AP exams is like the return on the investment because college courses can be like thousands of dollars. And so that is if you can think about it more long term, that is something to consider about. But if you can't afford it either way, then do look into dual enrollment. And you won't like there I went to a school that didn't offer EPs. You'll be fine. So colleges will understand that. So do the best that you can, look for other free ways for you to stand out and you should be fine. The next question is about how one can migrate and get financial aid scholarships. um I am not as familiar with the immigration process, so I am going to ask for someone else to potentially cover that question in the chat. So I hope that's okay. I'm sorry about that. um but
Okay, so the next question is which top STEM colleges offer generous scholarships to international applicants? So I'm not an international applicant myself. So like I would just suggest just doing a lot of research on the website, and you can also go on Reddit for like some suggestions, and like you can go on like you can just ask people on the server as well. I did apply to out of like an international school. I like applied for the Lester B. Pearson scholarship, which is for University of Toronto. And they give you like a full ride scholarship if you get it, but it's only for like 37 applicants in the world. So you can find like these like special scholarships like these just by searching on the website because that's how I found it. Like I didn't really like not many people told me about it before.
Adding on to Amy, the college. Oh wait, I'm so sorry. Okay, so the college admissions websites will be your best friend throughout this process. So for every single college you are applying to, you want to get really familiar with the website, going through, looking for the different programs that are available, different scholarship, grants, financial aid, all of that. You really want to just dedicate your time looking into the college websites because that's where you will get the bulk of your information. So the next question that I see is a little bit of a more specific question. And so the person wants to know the possibilities at disposal for scholarships and studying, again, given that they were born in the US but are living in Bolivia, and given that their family is low income. So I think that so I'm pretty sure that if you are a US citizen, you should still be able to fill out the FAFSA, and you will still qualify for the majority of financial aid. I'm sorry, like both of us aren't as familiar with the international element, but I think that you should still be able to qualify for the majority of financial aid since you're a US citizen. I think also that you do, for example, if you're low income, Questbridge is a great thing to look out for. Also just looking for schools that offer 100%, um, that meet 100% of aid or need, um, and just still just shooting your shot. You never know what awards you might get offered later down the line, so I do recommend not to cancel out the school solely because of the tuition sticker price, because you never know what scholarships you may be awarded from the school until you apply. So shoot your shot, and since you're a citizen, you should still qualify for the majority of financial aid, I believe.
Yeah, so that's the end of the questions we got from the forum. So in the chat, there was a question that says, "What is the most important factor in your college application?" And I would suggest it to be essays because your grades don't really matter. Like if they meet the range that they list in the website, most colleges are just gonna see you as like the same as other people with like the same grade in that range. So you just have to focus on distinguishing yourself, and how you distinguish yourself is through your essays and also the additional information in the section. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so I do want to say that it's not that your grades and test scores are like irrelevant, like they are important. And like you can be hurt if you don't have scores that meet the college's expectations. But the reason why I see that is all the more important is because at some point that's really the only place in your application that you have control over. At some point you don't really have control over your rec letters. You don't have control over your grades because they're kind of the past. You don't have control over your test scores because I wouldn't really advise taking the SAT in November when your application is due in December. Um, so at some point, essays is really the one place that you can really make sure that you shine, and that you can also potentially provide explanations if there are setbacks that prevented you from performing to the best of your ability. But really focusing on what you can control is really important. Another question, I did saw someone ask if they're applying to 40 colleges, so what to do. I would heavily suggest cutting back that list if possible because so I personally applied to roughly like a little under 30. And so although I was able to get like a bunch of acceptances and also a bunch of rejects, it is just so stressful, and I really don't think you should apply to a school that you know you wouldn't attend. There were some schools that I had personally applied to because I kind of just wanted to feel like a backup. So I do think that, like, for example, there were some schools that were safeties, and I was like, I think I'm going to get accepted, and then maybe I'll get financial aid offers that I could maybe negotiate. But I really feel like it's just not worth spreading your time so thin. because that time that you're spending on schools that you wouldn't really feel that excited to attend anyways, it's time that you could spend on polishing schools that are maybe reach schools or schools that are a bit more competitive. So I do think I think 20 to 30 is like the maximum. So 40, I would really suggest you cutting some down for your personal sake. That being said, if you have a lot of time to spare in the world and you want to go ahead and do it, like no one's stopping you. Also remember that the common application has a limit of 20 schools. So at that point, you probably will also be applying to schools in different portals as well. Um, so I would really just advise you to pay attention to your mental health and don't do it for the flex, but do it because you actually enjoy the colleges that you're applying to. Yeah.
Yeah. So I only applied for 5 to 7 schools because I already had one school that I really wanted to get into. So I would say just focus on that school mainly and then always have some safeties and reach schools because like I was gonna like apply to a bunch of reach schools, but I decided in the last minute not to since I didn't want to risk focusing on like another application to have my dream school application be like less satisfactory than I wanted it to be. Um, and I saw a question about time management tips. I would say start like you can just like have like some time on the weekend where you just focus on filling out the comment app and you can also like fill it out with like a parent because there's like a family section so they can help you stay motivated. Um yeah, but you just have to like push yourself to get these essays done and try to like think about the right side like you're writing about yourself and you can like show like throughout the college admission process I learned a lot of like new things like about who I was that I didn't realize before, so just like try to like think on the right side.
Yeah, so first with adding on to Amy, I feel like time management, I mean, that's something that I personally struggle with a lot. But I think that I feel like for me sometimes I would hit roadblocks or it's like for me it's like when I knew that it was something that I think when I was writing a personal statement, I spent so much time just brainstorming because I really had this notion that like if I just like flesh it all out in brainstorms, then when I finally write, it'll all come together. That's not how it works really. So if you find yourself like spending so much time brainstorming and not actually writing, just put the brainstorming aside. My school heavily emphasizes this concept of free writing. Free writing is essentially maybe you'll set like a time for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and just sit down and write whatever comes to your mind. So, for example, maybe if you have like a bunch of different topic ideas for your essays, you can phrase them all as questions and then just block out 10 minutes and just write whatever comes to your mind about that question and just getting started on actually writing and just look for things like that that you might be doing where it's like it's productive procrastination but still procrastination and try to do whatever you can to just block those out and just tell yourself to sit down and just do it. Way more easier said than done. I'm a master procrastinator, so I feel that a lot. But yeah, just try your best to just sit down and do it. Study groups, like if you have friends who are applying to similar colleges as you and who won't bite you in the back, then like working together on applications, like working on them at the same time, asking each other questions, surrounding yourself with people who are motivated, and who inspire you and don't make you feel down about the process is really helpful. Another question I'm seeing is about fee waivers. So most schools, so for some schools, fee waivers is quite interesting because first of all, College Board will, if you qualify for College Board fee waivers, then I am pretty sure you can apply those to 20 schools. Don't tell my word, please Google that to make sure. But so there is College Board fee waivers. Then there are school specific fee waivers. I am pretty sure that there is no specific form process for asking for fee waivers. So even if you're international, I think you should still be able to qualify. The best way to know if you can get a fee waiver from a school is to email the admissions officers directly. So reach out to them, maybe explain your situation, asking that I really want to apply to your school because I love it, or whatever, but I am not able to afford the cost of the college application fee for whatever reason. And so I would really appreciate if you could potentially give me a fee waiver so that I'll be able to apply. Make that fancier, obviously, but it really the best way to figure out if you can get a fee waiver is to email the admissions office. And so again, your two best friends during this process will be the email addresses of the admissions officers and the college websites of all the schools you're applying to. So for me, I did not have to really fill out any fancy forms. So I think international should still be able to qualify, but check that in um, with the specific schools you're applying to.
Yeah, and I already addressed this before, but in the end of the day, it's pretty random. Like you don't have like sometimes when you get like if you don't get the results you want, it's not your fault or like it's not because your essays weren't on par or your grades weren't on par. Like for some schools, like I know for Michigan, for early action, sometimes the admission officers don't read like a portion of the applications. So being deferred is just out of chance. Yeah, and let me see if there's more questions. Oh, do you also have to pay to send over test scores? Yes, and that's because and when you like send test scores like through College Board, I think they'll see all your scores, but when you report on Common App, they'll only see your super score scores, like the highest score you got in each section that you're gonna report. Um.
Yeah. So
Oh,
just
the CC.
oh, okay,
Oh,
okay,
yeah. Sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
You continue. Oh, you can continue.
Okay, I was just going to briefly add on to that and say, so if you do qualify for a College Board, like SAT fee waiver, for example, then you should be able to also qualify for fee waivers for sending score to colleges. So it's kind of like a package, sort of. That's how I kind of think about it, because if you qualify for a College Board fee waiver, you get fee waivers from taking the SAT. You get fee waivers for sending schools your official reports, and also for applying to colleges and getting fee waivers. So really take advantage of that and see if you can qualify. Um, yeah, I am not completely sure about the international element because I didn't apply internationally. So you do want to just check in for your specific situation. But if you can qualify for sending your test scores to colleges for free, definitely look into that.
Yeah, and if you have any questions like we can't answer, you can always email the school you're planning to apply to for like the like the truth and the facts. And for the CSS profile, it opens October 1st, I believe, and so that's when you can access it. And I when I filled it out, I just used the College Board website. I didn't really have to email the colleges separately. I think you could just like add the colleges while you're filling out the form. So yeah. Okay. Any more questions that we didn't address?
Do you see a question about restrictive early action? I personally didn't apply restrictive early action. Amy, do you want to talk about that?
Wait,
I believe that
I don't really
restrictive,
know much about.
yeah, I think so. I do know that Harvard, for example, has restrictive early action. I am pretty sure that it's not as a binding as early um decision, but it is still more binding than like early action, for example. I'm gonna do a little bit of Googling and get back to that question. Um, so yeah. So one question that I see is about prioritizing tasks and not getting overwhelmed with an infinite to-do list. I think that one thing about to-do lists is that they never end. I feel like especially when you have a lot on your plate, it'll never end. There's always something you can be doing. So I think like not getting yourself too bugged out about getting to every single item, prioritizing the to-do list, seeing like what you absolutely need to do versus what can be pushed back a little bit later, and getting a head start whenever you have the chance. I think also finding something we all tend to, I feel like I do this especially a lot, is productive procrastination, where I am being productive but I'm still procrastinating. I feel like, for example, I tend to ask this question a lot to other people, asking them, how do you not procrastinate? And for me, that's like a way of like, I know that I need to stop procrastinating, but it is still a form of procrastination. Watching YouTube videos on how to not procrastinate is procrastination. So really just like exactly that as well. That's also something I struggle with. So really, spending time to just sit down and get your mind to it. For me, like I think it's really nice to have like a mental switch, like having something that the moment you do it, it just puts you in the zone. For me, recently, I realized that handwriting, because I usually don't write by hand. I usually just type because we live in a digital world. But sometimes for me, like writing down on paper, like this is what I'm going to do, I feel like it just activates a mental switch for me sometimes. So figuring out stuff like that works for you. Um, yeah, sometimes you just sit down and do it and look for anything negative that you're doing and figuring out ways that you can combat that. I hope that wasn't too broad, and let me know if you have more specific questions about that. Yeah.
Okay, so for time management, like I usually like get really stressed and procrastinate, but when once like it got really close to the deadline, I had like this adrenaline rush that like I didn't really feel before. So um that's when I like actually felt like I was working like really productively even though it was a month before the deadline. Also, like like it's gonna feel very stressful at first, but once you're done with the process, it's like the greatest relief ever. So you should like think about looking forward to that moment when you're done with your college admission process. And SAT or ACT, like it doesn't matter among college admission officers because like for some admission officers, it's like a three-step process. It first goes to this reader who summarizes your whole application. So if you're in the score range, they're gonna let you through after they like look over your essays and extracurriculars. So they're just gonna make a summary of your whole application and then send it to the people who are gonna accept or defer or reject you. Yeah, so don't be too stressed about your standardized testing. Since a lot of people who go test optional can also get in.
Completely agree with that. And we saw that especially like one of the reasons why schools became so competitive in the last year cycle is because a lot of students didn't submit test scores and were a lot more competitive and were complete like regarded as competitive applicants even without submitting test scores. So if you don't want to submit a test score, that's completely fine. As long as the rest of your application you feel is strong enough to portray who you are. Another question that I am seeing is how to decide whether or not you want to apply early action or early decision, and reviewing your college list by someone else. So first, to decide between early decision and early action, the one thing to remember is the binding. That's really what distinguishes early decision and early action, is the fact if you get accepted to early decision, you have to attend, with very limited exceptions. So only like make sure you do like college visits, going on tours to the colleges that you're considering early decision to, making sure that you really look through all the different resources, listen to, ask, reach out to people who are currently attending that school. LinkedIn is amazing because I got to find some people who are alumni from my high school and were attending schools that I was applying to, and I was able to reach out to them, ask them questions, form new friends even. So reach out to people who are current students at the schools you're considering applying to. Really make sure that you just delve as much time as you can to making sure that this is a school you truly want to go to. Um, Early action, there's no limit to how many schools you want to apply early action. And I do think that the nice thing about early action is just getting it over with earlier so that you have more time to just spend for yourself later on in high school, later on in this your senior year. So really like make sure that whatever you're applying early decision to is truly like the one that you see yourself being in for 4 years and can designate your life to. In terms of getting your college list reviewed by others, the same thing that I would say for essays is that it's okay to have it reviewed, and it's always nice to have like a few eyes on it, but make sure that you take everything with a grain of salt, and that you a sense of like who you are authentically. I think making sure that it's balanced so that you're not flooding your list with so many safeties or with so many reaches, although it's nice to like shoot your shot. But yeah, always keep it keep it with a grain of salt and make sure that whatever ends up happening, you do still keep it authentic to who you are. Um, Amy, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Okay. So like related to the LinkedIn, like personally, I went on like these universities Discord servers and Reddit, and I asked like these really nice like students to read my essays as well. Like I only asked one to two of them, and they gave me some really nice constructive criticism. Um. Also, I'm blanking. So I think like I'm pretty sure you should like the main thing is just to email your colleges about the questions, and yeah, and you should like ask like a few people to review your college list to see, like, but like I think you just need to make sure you have safeties, reaches, and match schools that you like you think you're compatible in getting into. And yeah,
Yep,
any more questions?
I completely agree with Amy. And I also just want to go back to the restrictive early action because I think I better understand it now. So I did some searching. So my understanding of Harvard's restrictive early action, for example, is that number one, it's non-binding. So you do not have to attend Harvard if you get accepted through the restrictive early action. Number two is that you can, if you apply through Harvard's restrictive early action, you can only apply through early action to other public colleges and universities in the United States, as well as other foreign colleges and universities throughout the globe. But you can't apply early through any private institutions. For example, I'm pretty sure that would mean that if you apply restrictive early action to Harvard, you wouldn't be able to do early action for any other Ivies or for any other schools that aren't like the state schools or city schools. So that is a lot. I'm going to put a screenshot of what Harvard says from their website if y'all want to read specifically what it does there. So I hope that clarifies. And yeah, feel free to continue sending in any questions in the chat. If the questions start dwindling down, then we might end the session. So yeah, just let us know if you have any questions. Um, I do see a question that I had addressed earlier about what the most valuable EC is. Like Anshul said, as I said earlier, the one that you feel that you can speak the most about and that speaks truly to who you are. You also do want to look for, it can be an advantage for you to look for extracurriculars where it's not as common, but also ones that you can potentially get leadership positions in or just can delve a lot of time and show commitment in and make a good impact. But all of that being said, whatever you can really show your true self through and show your capabilities, that's the most valuable you see. In terms of when you should start looking at internships, it's never too early to start. You can look right now, even, and look for local community centers, look for local hospitals, look for online internships for software engineering, for example. The list is pretty much endless. You do want to pay attention to age requirements or grade requirements because that there are some that have specific requirements, but the list is endless. It's never too early to start. If you, for example, see that maybe an internship that you're applying to has a requirement, then maybe you can look into freelancing, or maybe you can look into taking some courses to hone in your skills so that you can be more effective at freelancing. There's always something you can be doing if you have the time to. Um, Please send any other questions. Do you have a specific field in which you're looking for internships in? Um, Okay, so for medical, I think that there's a couple of things that you can do. So the first thing is, even if it's not like an official internship program, looking at local community hospitals and just asking them, for example, if you can shadow a doctor for a day or for a week or for longer even. Looking if you can do like volunteer at local hospitals, looking at if you can be an intern at medical research labs. I think that there is kind of like the feeling that I need to apply for a specific medical program, but sometimes just even going to your own personal pediatrician or your own personal physician and asking if you can shadow them for a day and just get a better sense of who they are and what they do and then stemming it from there. So you don't have to look for like a very specific internship program. You can just go to like local hospitals and ask them. That being said, that a lot of hospitals may have specific programs. For example, I live close to the Mount Sinai system, and so Mount Sinai does have specific like programs. For example, at the ICANN School of Medicine, there's like a specific program for high school students, or there's like you must be at least 15 and you have to fill out a specific form and all of that. So look into the hospitals that are nearby you, look into medical laboratories, look into professors at local institutions who are doing medical or bio medical research. Yeah, so I hope that helps.
Yeah. So any other questions?
Yes, that is awesome. And I think that that's kind of like the benefit of the remote learning world is that I feel like sometimes, for example, I am quite shy in person, but it's just so much easier to be outgoing in a world where everyone is just speaking online and you don't really have to show your face. That's one benefit that I do appreciate a lot about being online all the time. So if there's anybody who you admire, just shoot your shot. Like even if you may feel that you aren't qualified yourself, just putting yourself out there, reaching out to local people nearby who you admire, for people on the internet who you admire. You never know where you can end up. You never know if you never try. So you definitely just shoot a shot and reach out to anybody who you are interested in. Yes. And on the point of shooting your shot, I think that the college admissions process is very similar to dating. That being said, I've never dated before, so there's only so much I could talk about that. But the entire concept of like making sure that you get to know the college and making sure that the college gets to know you and making sure that you um take their chances and risk it. Like I feel like the entire concept of it is just so similar to dating. So that's a little funny analogy to help you feel more inspired to try and just give it a shot and just risk it, because the worst thing that can happen is that a college says no to you or that a program says no to you, and then you move on and come out stronger than ever. So just try. Um, I do see Elaine is typing. I'm just going to continue calling for any other questions. And yeah, so I'll wait for future questions, for further questions, I mean. Okay, so wait, Amy, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, sure. Let me go. Yeah, it's actually nice for your extracurriculars to be related because that means you're like focused on like one topic or one subject because like the more dedication you choose like the more dedication you show like the more potential you have. And if you're like focused on 10 different things, you're probably not going to have much dedication in all of them or have like a passion in one specific area. And yeah, um yeah, so usually colleges are looking for people who can create change, and they the more you like show that you're focused on one area, you'll like seem like you're gonna create change in that one area, and that's like a higher chance than like focusing on a bunch of different topics that you can't really like have that much of an impact on.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think on that note, like another going back to a question about how you can make your application stand out. I think making your application like be a cohesive narrative. And so an advantage of having all related extracurriculars is that you can create a narrative out of those extracurriculars and show that like I am truly devoted to writing journalism, book writing, all that. And I'm really skilled in it. So creating a story out of all your different sections. If you don't have as related extracurriculars, that's not a disadvantage though, because it can show that you have a variety of interests and that you are a interdisciplinary student, which is especially nice for liberal arts schools or for more interdisciplinary research programs. So regardless of whether you have unrelated or related extracurriculars, you can always make it work, as long as you word it good and as long as you find a way to create a cohesive application where all the different sections connect. And as Amy said earlier, where nothing is repeated unnecessarily. In terms of how many different activities would be a good amount, I think that it like I would look at the hours that you're spending and also like just yeah, I think hours is a better way to look at it than number of things that you're doing, because there's only so many hours in the day and you do also want to make sure you're devoting time for yourself. And if you I think with like a volunteer EMT program, for example, that is like a huge dedication and is a quite intense program that I'm hoping to do in the future as well. So I think that you don't like I think that if you feel like through that EMT program alone you are having a good impact, then that is completely fine. If you are looking for more things to do, it can't hurt, but like find your limit in terms of the amount of hours you can dedicate and for your own mental health. So I would say as much as you can handle while still being on top of your schoolwork and while still taking care of yourself. You don't want to be sacrificing sleep. Like there were some times where some people would sleep for like 2 hours a night, and it's just like it's not worth it in the long run, in my opinion. Take care of yourself. So as much as you can handle while still taking care of yourself and while still staying on top of academics is my answer. Um, yeah, Elaine, I think you're in an amazing place. So really conveying how passionate you are should be amazing, because it's clear that you care a lot about writing and journalism and all that. I do see the questions that are starting to die out. So just a reminder again to send questions if you have them. You can always send questions in our Discord server anytime. We are amazing people. We don't bite. So please feel free to send us your questions at any moment. I do just want to thank you again so much for attending the session. This is our first session of our college application series. The next event that will be that we will be having, oh my god, is on August 28th. I do know that that is the date of the SAT, so if you aren't able to attend, we will have it recorded on our YouTube page, just like this session. On the 28th, we will be going over building a college list. So look out for an announcement for that soon as well. And also look out for a feedback form coming up soon from me to ask about your thoughts on the session and for ideas for future sessions and topics that you would really be interested in seeing. So thank you again so much to everyone. Thank you again to Amy for being such an amazing host as well. I'm really excited for the college application series to come, and I hope you all have an amazing day. So thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.